Cringe. Cringe. What is cringe? Is this kind of cringe? If everything is cringe, then what is Beisht anymore? Is stealing another channel's intro kind of cringe? Yes. Anime gacha game? More like kinda cringe, bruh. What about this entire segment? Yeah, actually this whole bit is pretty cringe. Let's move on. Flashback. It's Christmas break, I need something to play. I was going to continue working my way through Final Fantasy XIV, but then Endwalker came out and the devs were like, please stop, we can't handle any more of you! So it didn't seem like a great option. So I decided to drag a few friends along as I plummeted back into a grind from my high school days. Destiny. I played a fair amount of it over the break. It was a good time. Maybe too much though, because eventually I didn't have much left that I wanted to grind for. That's why I began looking for something else, because I have a chronic necessity to grind. Some of my friends had been playing this one other game. You guys might have heard of it before. It's called Genshin Impact. It looked interesting enough, so I figured, what the heck, I'll give it a try. That was 3 weeks ago. In that time, I've gotten through pretty much the entire game as of update 2.4. And today, I'm going to talk about my Genshin experience with some degree of spoilers. So come, take a seat, get comfy, and let's get into it. And if you like my content and you want to see more, please make sure to like and subscribe. It is always greatly appreciated. And if you already have, thank you very much for your support. As a starting point, I always assumed Genshin was just some random company trying to ride off the coattails of Breath of the Wild. And you know what? Considering how long it's taking Breath of the Wild 2 to come out, I'd say MiHoYo made the right move. But they didn't just draw in that specific crowd with a piece of crap knockoff. Genshin has actually proven to be a good deal of fun, and most certainly has heart put into it. I guess we'll start off with the most basic aspect of the game. Combat. How it works, what you can do, all that jazz. Genshin plays as a third-person open-world action RPG, and combat is extremely complex and hard to master. Okay, I jest. On the surface, it's a lot of spam clicking and just whittling down your enemies with the occasional button pushes, but it has the capability of being more complex. Every character has two abilities, an elemental skill and elemental burst. The skill is your basic ability, you'll be using this a lot more in combat. Your elemental burst is more like an ultimate ability that you'll be using less often in comparison, but packs quite the punch. It may seem like it's too plain, but there's two aspects that need to be taken into account. One, that this game is on mobile as well, and two, elemental reactions. There are 7 elemental types in this game: Pyro, Hydro, Anemo, Electro, Dendro, Cryo, and Geo. When you damage an enemy with one of these elements, it leaves them under the effect of that element. So let's say you're fighting a Pyro enemy, which is fire. You can use Hydro, or water, to deal more damage to them, and also make them wet, moist. You can then follow that up with another damage type to combo with their Hydro affliction. Let's go with Cryo. If you use ice power on wet things, they become frozen, and they take more bonus damage and become immobile for a short time. Each character has their specific element, except for your starting traveler, who can use various elements, and there's plenty of reactions for you to mess around with, so feel free to experiment. I really like the reaction system. It reminds me of my time with various Daylife, and I like how its ability to become more complex contrasts with the no-brain clicking of normal attacks with your weapons. Oh yeah, that's something I didn't touch on. There are plenty of different weapon options, and each character uses a specific type, be it plain swords, giant claymores, bows and arrows, or weird magical catalysts for spellcasting.
What the dog doing?
These two aspects just blend together nicely and make for satisfying combat. Now, everybody has their favorite characters, their mains, and at first, I was just an Anemo Traveler main, the only true way to play Traveler. But there was one character that I got to do a trial for, and instantly fell in love with their playstyle. After that, obtaining her became my main goal, and so I grinded those Primo Gems, until finally I got her. Shenhe is easily my favorite character. Her design, her quick and snappy gameplay, she's made Genshin infinitely more fun for me. And paired with my C2 Chunyun, yes, I got pretty lucky with him in these 3 weeks, every enemy I encounter is just obliterated. Her quest was also incredible, a very cool backstory, and I love when she just appeared during the battle against Beisht and froze a freaking tsunami, then proceeded to chase after the Hydra beneath the waves, and then ending everything with that beautiful Chinese opera from Yunjin depicting Shenhe's life story. And then there's her theme song and sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I just really love Shenhe. Another satisfying thing about this game, the boss fights. Genshin does a great job at building up some of its hardest fights, and then delivers when it comes to the actual battles, especially against the Raiden Shogun, the god of the game's third region, Inazuma. I'll go over that in more detail later on, but I'll just say they really made her feel like you're fighting an actual god. Now, this may be an unfair comparison, but after having played something like Dark Souls 3, the dodging in this game is so easy. With a few exceptions, enemies have some massive wind-ups on abilities. It was how I was able to finish Liwa at level 20 so comfortably.
Excuse me, what?
Oh, right. I should probably elaborate on that. So, I imposed a challenge on myself. I decided that I was going to limit test Genshin Impact and see just how far I could get before the game was basically going to tell me, no, stop, you're not allowed to do this anymore. All of my friends were begging me to learn what Ascension was, but I'd just be like, no, I don't think I will. Besides, who needs Ascension when you can just smash your face into something for 30, 40 minutes at a time without co-op and eventually come out on top? Time is the toppler of giants, and Destiny has taught me well.
There it is! I tied it back in, it's all connected!
So here I was, forcing my way through the game with a level 20 party. And despite the world getting meaner and tougher as I progressed, I just kept going. Granted, time-limited moments were pretty scary. Those were the real gatekeepers of the challenge. Making the most of my elemental reactions was absolutely critical, especially when I didn't have any concept of using food outside of just healing. But I got past them and continued onward. The game never told me I had to ascend, it just said highly dangerous everywhere I went. And highly dangerous does not mean unkillable. In the end, the challenge was a lot of fun and actually turned out to be a lot more helpful in the long term because it allowed me to store up a lot of resources until I finally decided on who and what I wanted to upgrade. I managed to get all the way through to Chapter 1, Act 3, which is the defense of Liyue Harbor. After that, I realized the brick wall was already starting to punch back at me, so I decided to finally ascend after that and go to level 40. This is yet another instance of me kicking myself in the ass for not recording my whole playthrough because I didn't think I was going to be making a video on this game. But I do have a few clips to show as proof, so please have this clip where I beat the final boss of Liyue's third act at level 20 on my first try, where the boss was nearly twice my level. I just want to bring this up because it naturally had a massive influence on my experience with the game. And if the name Liyue Harbor meant nothing to you, then it's time we talked about... Let's talk about the story. Here's a quick breakdown of the premise for you. Two traveling siblings, brother Aether and sister Lumine, of which you choose one to play as, arrive on the world of Teyvat, and when they attempt to leave, an unknown god stops them, capturing your other sibling and leaving you stranded in Teyvat. The main purpose of your journey is to travel across the world and meet each of the gods to try and find the one that captured your sibling to rescue them. Of course, this is just the overarching plotline. Each chapter of the game has its own story related to its region. The prologue has you start off in Mondstadt, a land of grassy plains and gentle winds themed after an old European style. Chapter 1 takes you to Liyue, a stony, mountainous region heavily marinated in Chinese culture, and Chapter 2 takes place on the island nation of Inazuma, which has a Japanese aesthetic. The prologue was fine. There's one issue I had with the start of the game, and that is the locking of main story quests behind adventure ranks, or AR. Mondstadt's story for the prologue is already a bit slow as is, so locking each act behind a required AR level was a bit annoying, especially when it feels like it takes forever to unlock adventure ranks in the early game. AR is the main sign of how far into the game you are. It controls what content you can access, your world level, and other stuff. And again, in the early game, it takes a good while to get to the next level, compared to Liwa and Inazuma, where I was getting enough AR as I was going along in the story that I would only need one more rank at most to advance, typically speaking. It also stinks how high you have to be to do co-op at AR 16, I just wish that was a little bit lower. That aside, Mondstadt's story was perfectly fine. It's when you get to Liwa that things really start picking up. Everything gets infinitely more interesting, and you can really tell that a lot of love and care went into making Chapter 1. The characters, the plot, the locale, everything oozed of Chinese culture, and it was wonderful. The ending was fantastic. I loved the Tartaglia boss fight and the defense of Liwa Harbor. Both of those were absolutely incredible. Act 4 was also quite the nice surprise. I'm not going to spoil any twists, but I was not expecting a sudden focus on the main plot for the Traveler, so it was really good. Inazuma was also amazing, and personally, I can't decide on whether I like it or Liwa more. I've heard a lot of backlash towards Inazuma, and I don't personally get it. As of the time of this review, the last Archon quest was Chapter 2, Act 3, and I'm fairly certain that's not going to be the end of Inazuma. I definitely see more to come, so I'm not really let down by how it ended. If anything, I'm more excited after seeing the heights of Inazuma's story, and curious how they're going to wrap it up. I think my overall opinion on Liwa and Inazuma is that Liwa has more consistently strong writing throughout, whereas Inazuma has higher, more exciting peaks. The two final boss fights of Inazuma's third act were absolutely incredible. Spoilers here, but Signora's kick-ass theme and two-phase fight with her wicked design, and you know I'm already a sucker for butterfly-themed bosses, and then the staticky glitch walk after witnessing the Shogun perform the Muso no Hitotachi, basically having been flashbanged from merely witnessing a god's ultimate move, and then having to fight said god right after with the incorporation of the Inazuma theme into the Raiden Shogun's second phase song, which is based on the old Japanese song Sakura Sakura. That's the kind of peak I'm talking about. Truly phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, the defense of Liwa Harbor was absolutely incredible too. I think I'm just more partial to Inazuma's climax a bit more. Can I also add how I love how powerful they make the Raiden Shogun out to be? Like, Tartaglia was honestly a joke by his second phase because of how pathetically big his windups were for his attacks, but Raiden Shogun, now that was way more brutalizing, much more challenging, and far more satisfying to fight because it really did feel like a battle against a god. I like how there's a specific quest called Anti-Raiden Shogun Training where the entire point is learning how to dodge her attacks. I thought it was hilarious. But overall, the main plotline has my attention, and I'm excited to see where it goes. The cast of this game is also wonderful. Everyone is brilliantly designed and looks fantastic, as typical of a gacha game, of course, and they all have really fun and unique personalities. You also get the chance to know them better through the character quests and hangouts, which basically equate to dating sims. The voice acting is alright, some performances stand out more than others, and I was listening to the English dub. One thing I find really funny is how nonchalant dialogue from Paimon and the Traveler is. They're both just so blunt and casual with their mannerisms that it makes for a lot of hilarious moments, and the running gag of Paimon being emergency food is great.
Created the sigil of permission. It wasn't to be used as someone's relic.
There is one problem I have with the voice lines though, and that is the fact that the subs and dubs sometimes don't match up. If it's a word or two, I can forgive it, but when the Traveler has the wrong pronouns being used, or the character speaking is using completely different words than what the sub is depicting, it hurts my brain. This happens a lot more in the early game, but there's some instances that happen occasionally later on.
Thank me. Karma is harmful to the human body, even if you have a stronger constitution than most. You should keep your distance from me when you can afford to.
Since we're traveling across Teyvat, that means we've got lots to see and things to do. The actual open world of Genshin is massive, like really massive. And there's no loading barriers between zones, the whole world just exists. You could do a running marathon from Mondstadt to Liwa Harbor if you really wanted to. So to make getting around easier, there are a multitude of teleport waypoints and statues of the Seven around the world. Activating a statue will reveal more sections of the world map, serve as a rest stop for your party to heal up freely, and can be upgraded by collecting the associated elemental oculus in that region. Upgrades will reward you greatly, as well as increase your total stamina, which is used for everything: running, climbing, using charged attacks, wing gliding. I really liked all the zones. Mondstadt has that perfect atmosphere to start an adventure off in, with its rolling hills and wide fields filled with enemies to fight and chests to loot. Liyue can be a little annoying to navigate sometimes, considering it's 10% rock and 90% heights, but it more than makes up for it with its beautiful colors that remind me of autumn, as well as being littered with ancient ruins with tons of neat puzzles to solve and rare treasures to collect. The puzzles in Genshin usually aren't super tough. In fact, they can be kind of simplistic, but there's some neat gimmicks here and there that make you scratch your brain folds. Challenges are also fun. I like the time ones the most, where you gotta collect all the particles or get to a chest before time elapses. Those are good. Inazuma was interesting because it kind of mixed these two and flavored itself with Japanese culture, but the more interesting aspect is how each of the islands has a different aspect to them that the place is focused around. Underneath that, we have Enkonomiya, the abandoned underground city with a neat day and night puzzle mechanic. I don't know, I just cleared the place so I could farm the boss that dropped Shenhe's upgrade materials, and I forgot to grab the map off the wall of the library, so I did the entire plot line without a world map down there. Don't be like me, kids. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, Dragon Spine. Well, I suppose it's time for an anecdote for my level 20 journey. There's only one zone in the entire game that I've 100%ed so far, and that's Dragon Spine. I realize that some of you familiar with this place may feel a sense of fear right about now. Good. For those who aren't aware, allow me to elaborate. It's the prologue, and I'm still rocking the level 20 loadout. I need to grind out my adventure rank so I can get to the next part of the story, and so I'm wandering the globe in search of ways to increase it. I want to expand my map, and I see a statue to the south, so I make my way there. I find myself on this snowy mountain that's giving me this neat little blue bar above my health, and all the enemies here are like twice my level. And then I notice the chests. Chests everywhere, and I knew what needed to be done. Thus began my journey to master Dragonspine. I managed to get all the way to the peak and finish the main quest line for Dragonspine at level 20. But the 100% admittedly came later as I proceeded to ascend and level up later on. But still, I got to the top at level 20 and nothing else trained me nearly as much as this shit peak of a hill. Especially when I only had one pyro character at the time, and I was forced to use her to carry me. Yes, you know who it is, our favorite 3-star character, Amber. So if you aren't aware, Dragonspine seems to be universally agreed upon as being the most annoying zone in the game. That little blue bar I was talking about earlier, well, that's called sheer cold, and anytime you are not standing next to a waypoint or a source of heat on this mountain, the bar begins to fill, and when it hits the max, you will continuously drain health until you find a source of heat to remove the effect. This makes combat and navigating your way around a lot harder than other zones, so I had to adapt and work on staying alive for as long as possible in nearly every encounter. I also embraced the life of a mountain goat and started learning how to climb my way around my problems. It brought me back to the old days of getting lost in the mountains of Skyrim because I was unaware that the game had a map feature. That aside, Dragonspine is home to tons of cool puzzles and loot. Honestly, once you get better at managing sheer cold, it's super fun to roam around on. There's another neat mechanic where you have to break these red crystals to gain a temporary buff that lets you melt certain piles of ice, which unlocks more stuff naturally. There's also a weird tree. I love this tree. I appease the tree by feeding it crimson agate, and soon I will reach the highest favor with the frost-bearing tree. There's also this weird heart. It creeps me out, but it gave me this cool polearm. I got this sick claymore from the mountain too. Co-op is fine, I suppose. It's nice to have your friends join your world to help you with something if you're struggling, which I didn't really need, or to just meme and goof around until they steal all your resources. It's a little annoying that you can't join upwards, as in join a world that has a higher level than yours, but it makes sense, I suppose.
So, should we help?
No, this is much more fun like this.
One system that I'm not sure how I feel about is Original Resin. It's basically a stamina meter for being able to claim rewards from certain world bosses and domains, which are both used to grind character and weapon materials as well as artifacts. There's something about the resin system that irks me, probably the fact that it doesn't refill daily and only regenerates with time or from cracking open some more from consumables or using your primo gems to buy more. But I get that they want to give you something that is delayed so that you can't just grind out artifacts infinitely and then just be done with the game. I did luck myself out though, and got a very nice artifact set for my Shenhe, despite not being at the AR, that guarantees gold artifacts per drop. I will say though, you also burn through resources really quickly in this game. Upgrading characters and weapons to a late game state is extremely resource intensive, and I only have 2 characters and 1 weapon to level 80, which is still 1 ascension below the true max. There were also a few events going on when I played. Wind Trace was available for a while, and that was essentially just prop hunt in Genshin Impact. Honestly, really fun, loved the game mode, and it gave some decent rewards. I was going to make a joke about how I was pretty good at using fake baits to trick the hunters, but the game decided to do it for me. There was also the Lantern Rite, which was like a massive celebration for the Chinese New Year. They had all kinds of neat little games, like Shadow Puppet puzzles and Final Firework 14 crafting sim, and fun quests with all the Liyue characters. But even if none of this catches your attention, Genshin Impact also has fishing, which means it's automatically a good game regardless of your opinion. I only have a few more points left to discuss, so let's touch on the overall presentation. As stated previously when discussing the characters, the art style of Genshin is very good. It's just generally appealing to the eye, soft yet cool at the same time. Character designs are intricate and unique, and there's even costumes available for some of them. The cultural tone of each region really stands out in this department, and I love how much attention is given to developing the mood and style of each nation. And then there's the music. I keep reviewing games with fantastic soundtracks, but I can't help it if that's the reason I get sucked into these games. Genshin is no exception to this recurring theme of my videos. The music absolutely slaps. Chen is a phenomenal musician, and he has created so many fantastic tracks for this game, especially when it comes to battle themes. La Signora, Raiden Shogun, Tartaglia, Shenhe, all characters with themes that I absolutely adore. I especially love the layers of the Raiden Shogun's theme. Like I mentioned before, using an old Japanese folk song as the base for Inazuma's theme is incredible, but then there's also the element that the Electro Archon's theme is a mix of Japanese folk and electronic. It's so perfect and fitting. And it was La Signora's theme that got me into the game in the first place. Chen is now a name etched into my mind for making great music, up there with Revo, Masayoshi Soken, and epic Minecraft parodies. So all that's left to discuss is the big elephant in the room, and the thing that most people will curl their noses at, the gacha element. It's how MiHoYo makes money for the game since it's free to play, so I have no grievances with that. In fact, and I'm not just saying this, but Genshin Impact has the best gacha system I've ever encountered. It's very fair and forgiving, reasonable to grind for, and doesn't necessarily require you to spend any money. Those primo gems I've been mentioning throughout the review are your main way of obtaining wishes, the in-game term for pulls. Primos are earned through various methods, and you can buy one wish with 160 primos, which is a pretty fair grind. You can do single or 10 pulls with no difference to drop chance. The great part about wishes is the pity system. You are always guaranteed at least one 4-star or higher item every 10 pulls, so you aren't endlessly getting nothing. And then there's the 5-star pity. If you get to 75 pulls and haven't pulled a 5-star on a banner, your chance for a 5-star skyrockets, and you have a 50-50 chance of pulling either the banner focus unit or a 5-star from a separate pool. At 90 pulls, you automatically get a 5-star, and if you pull a 5-star at any point that isn't the banner focus, the next 5-star will be the focus unit. And lastly, pity carries over between banners. All these little mercies make Genshin's gacha system much more tolerable than any other I've played with in the past. I personally just do single pulls so that I can save on primos in case I just happen to pull the unit early, but 10 pulls can be very satisfying too. I also just got really lucky with my pulls and happened to pull the national team, some kind of cheap 4-star meta comp. Someday I'll actually put them all to good use. My final thoughts is good game. I'd give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10. It's certainly not perfect, and I have a few issues with it, but it's definitely not bad, and I'm going to continue playing it in the future because it's really fun. I had my doubts at first, thinking it was just another cringe anime gotcha bait, but Genshin Impact is really a good game at the end of the day, with a dev team that really cares about what they're doing and their fanbase. Give it a try if you're interested. It's available on a lot of different platforms, so go with whatever you want. And if you want an extra challenge, try the level 20 run. No ascending until you finish Chapter 1, Act 3 in Liwa. Best of luck. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more in the future, and leave me a comment down below. Thank you for watching, have a good one, and I'll see you soon.